constitutionalism between the two countries, or even the 3, 4, 5 East African countries? Do you feel like Kenya is carrying a bigger burden to try and push for this East African dream?
I think there is a sense in that, and there is almost a relationship by what Mheshimiwa Kipruto Kirwa has explained, the imbalance between Zanzibar and Tanganyika. You see also a bit of that in the relationship between Kenya and these other countries. Because a lot of times, Kenya at its own expense has had to give concessions so that the East African community can move forward. Because, and sometimes we blame our leaders, like, can't we be more decisive and stand up for the interests of Kenya? Because you can imagine how a good neighbor can stop you from getting maize from Zambia to bring it to your country. There is absolutely no sense in that. Or even when you have an excess maize in Tanzania, you also do not allow us to buy. And you can remember there is always this big fight where the Tanzanians are expecting that Kenyan drivers cannot take tourists to the Tanzanian side. And yet Kenya does not ordinarily give any conditions to similar conditions against Tanzanian drivers. And of course, I've heard something from hikers. I hike a few times every year, complaining about the situation from Kilimanjaro, where you cannot climb Kilimanjaro here from the Kenyan side. Yet this is a shared heritage. So the direct answer to that question is that indeed Kenya has had to carry an extra burden. But there's also something else that we talk about, an element of either envy or jealousy on the part of the leadership. Because for the most part, Yoweri Museveni has always been uncomfortable, even the Tanzanian leadership, with the fact that Kenya appears to be a little bit more progressive in a manner that makes them uncomfortable. You remember there has always been all this cry where they are saying, don't bring the bad manners of Kenya to the region. Bob Njage and his colleagues were abducted in Uganda. You've had situations whereby Boniface Mwangi and his colleagues were also abducted and tortured in Tanzania. Because all this leadership in this area, they view the freedom mindset of Kenyans as a big threat to their countries. And this is why in Kenya, and it is important to tie this to what is happening in Kenya. In Kenya, this is why you see that except at the business level, where you would have expected, because politically, the mindset of our President William Ruto and Suluhu and Yoweri Museveni is not very different. Because whereas those ones are clearly very backward in terms of constitutional and political development from the viewpoint of a liberal democracy, you see also Kenya in a situation whereby we are trying to retrogress, to go back to the imperial presidency where we came from. We are trying to buy the opposition. So that the only fortunate thing is that whereas you have two in Tanzania, you get a situation whereby the president, despite starting with a minority, he is nowadays having a majority. Only that if ODM were to play ball, they can change the constitutions if they wanted to do that. Therefore, you find there is democratic backsliding. There is, in Tanzania, Magufuli, and this is the danger of having a retrograde as president. Samia is only happening, let us not forget, because she was supposed to be a weakling from Zanzibar. The President Magufuli was afraid of having somebody who is strong, high up in the politics. He himself is a beneficiary, that he was some kind of a compromise candidate, so that the true candidates in Tanzania could be prevented from being president. So that this thing of politics, of manipulations, politics of the boardroom are always bad for the country. So that looking into the future, you are actually afraid of if democracy is aborted. And there are serious efforts to abort democracy if people manipulate democracy, so that, for example, you can sponsor impeachment motions in the hope that you will prevent strong candidates from vying against you. It is the same thing that in Tanzania they are doing by abducting people, killing opposition leaders, charging them with treason. So that they're looking forward. That is why we have a golden opportunity. Suluhu should not get into taking Africa, any country of Africa, into the 1980s. Finally, on this African Commission, it is no wonder African Union may die sooner or later. Why? It does not represent the aspirations of many Africans. You can see in West Africa, they striving to exclude countries from the AU, countries where they got rid of dictators. And then you punish them that they have military leaders. What is the difference between Suluhu or Yoweri Museveni and any of the military leaders? There actually was. So that instead of going for quality and say we don't want this kind of bad manners, the one you have in Suluhu and the one that you have with Yoweri Museveni, they actually say those are good leaders, but they kill people. Burkina Faso are no longer killing people, and Mali. Yet on what basis now can you say that Yoweri Museveni is better than this guy from Burkina Faso?
Right.
It's hypocrisy.
And of course, whatever is happening in Tanzania, dominating Kenyan headlines this morning. Tanzania massacre is a big one on the front page of the Standard, and very gruesome images there, which is also very new even to Kenyan media.